Bob Herbert's OpEd.tv is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation with the support of Ann Ulnick. Hi, I'm Bob Herbert. Welcome to OpEd.tv. Iconic is a word used much too often, but one of the most truly iconic photos from 20th century America, and one of the most disturbing, is this one of a young black girl, frighteningly alone, being screamed at by a hateful-looking white girl who was part of a racist mob in Little Rock, Arkansas, back in 1957. The black girl is Elizabeth Eckford, and the white girl is Hazel Bryan. And my guest, David Margolick, is the author of a wonderful book called Elizabeth and Hazel that traces the lives of these two women and the remarkable and often emotional ways in which they have interacted over the decades. David, welcome.
Thank you, Bob. It's great to be here.
So this was just a fabulous book. I mean, we do lots of books, and I only do books that I'm interested in, but this one I think is really over the top. A real, for a nonfiction book, it was more of a page turner than any that I can recall. So let's start with the basic story surrounding that photo. Tell us what was going on.
Well, the story is that Elizabeth Eckford was one of the Little Rock Nine who was walking to school that day. They had all arranged to go together with Daisy Bates of the NAACP. They were going to go as a group, as they very much needed to do. They needed to stick together.
Right.
But Elizabeth didn't have a telephone in her house and never got the word that they were assembling at the home of a local minister. And so she headed to school that morning on her own, very blithely on her own, wearing her homemade blouse and skirt,
Right.
filled with expectations about the first day of school, hopped on the city bus, got off a couple blocks from the school, and started walking, approaching the school by herself, really with very little sense of what lay in store for her. So that's why she was alone that morning. And she very quickly became surrounded by all of the people who had gathered at the school. I mean, everybody knew that something was that the black students were going to try to desegregate it that morning, and a mob had surrounded the school. The National Guardsmen that had been called out by Governor Faubus already ringed Little Rock Central
Right.
High School. And she just very naively walked into it all by herself, expecting that she would just be able to pass through the soldiers and make her way into the school, little knowing that Governor Faubus had ordered the soldiers to block any of the black students who tried to enter the high school.
So they weren't there to escort the kids into the school. They were there to keep the
They
kids.
were there to keep them out,
Right.
But no one knew that, and she certainly didn't know that. And she walked into the middle of the crowd, tried to get in on several different occasions. I think on 3 different occasions she approached them, and they would hold up their bayonets like this to keep her out. And she turned around and she just thought, well, maybe this wasn't where she was supposed to go in. And she tried again and again. And she finally got the message that she was not meant to go to school that day. And she started to walk towards the bus stop to go home. And that's when she was surrounded by all of these hecklers.
Because there were tons of people outside. I don't know if they were protesting, but they wanted to.
There were hundreds of people out there, all white, trying to protest the desegregation of the school. They were there to make trouble, and they were there to protest, and they were there to make sure that Little Rock Central High School, the ornament of the Little Rock school system, would not admit black students.
Right.
They were not there for friendly purposes, and there was no one there for her. And so she found herself surrounded by all of these people jeering at her, saying, "Nigger, go home, go back to Africa," saying all kinds of awful things to her.
She's 15 years old.
She's 15 years old, and she's shy, and she's a very emotional and in some ways a troubled girl. And she's all alone, and she's surrounded by all of these hateful people, one of whom, the famous face in the picture, of Hazel Bryan, also 15 years old, I think really not there to make so much of a political statement as just to be at the center of things.
Right, here's
And
the action outside
that's where
my
the
school.
action was,
Yeah.
and you know, thinking that this was going to be kind of fun. And so that moment was frozen in time by a photographer for the Little Rock paper named Will Counts. And it was an image that was transmitted all over the world. It was on the front page of the Little Rock papers, the front page of the New York papers, and became sort of a symbol of the civil rights movement and the pain of blacks trying to desegregate American institutions, all captured in the faces of these 15-year-old girls.
It really brought the hideousness of the racism and the struggle for civil rights in the South to the attention of a lot of people who did not have maybe they should have, but didn't have an understanding of how terrible it really was.
I think that's right. I mean, it crystallized the hatred. I mean, the look on Hazel's face couldn't be more explicit. And I think that it was an eye-opening. You couldn't ignore that picture.
Now, a very few people tried to help or give a little bit of assistance to Elizabeth. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, this is part of the one touching element of the story, that when Elizabeth finally sat down on the city bench waiting she knew that there was a bus route that went by the school at the far end of the school, and if she got to the bench, she felt that she would be safe, but the mob followed her there. And there were a couple of people in the crowd who came over and comforted her. I mean, not surprisingly, they were not from Little Rock. They were outsiders.
Right.
They were outsiders. And what makes it interesting, this was a piece that I had in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago. The first of them was the reporter for the New York Times, our alma mater.
Exactly.
The education writer, a man named Benjamin Fine. And he saw her sitting there by herself on the bench and felt sorry for her and fearful for her. The story is that he had 3 daughters himself, all about her age, and he walked over to her and sat down next to her on the bench and sort of cradled her a little bit and said, "Don't let them see you cry." I mean, it kind of chokes you up when you think about it. It was crossing a certain line journalistically. I mean, he was there to cover the story. I mean, it's an interesting thing that the Times didn't have somebody who covered the civil rights movement there. I mean, this is interesting for you and me journalistically.
Right.
They had their education writer there. They were underplaying the story. They didn't realize that it was going to be a story significant all over the world.
Right.
So he was there. He was not a tough man. He's wearing a bow tie. I mean, he couldn't have stood out more. He was the northern journalist, and of course he became the object of great abuse as well. People started shouting at him, calling him a nigger lover, you know, heaping all kinds of abuse on him for trying to comfort Elizabeth Eckford. He was one of the people. After he went and came and went, there was a woman named Grace Lorch, whose husband was a white woman whose husband was with the NAACP. And she went up to Elizabeth and also tried to help her. Mm-hmm. And Elizabeth sort of held her off. Elizabeth wasn't trusting anyone, but she tried to help Elizabeth, keep Elizabeth company, and then escort her to the bus when the bus came in. And there's a whole story about Grace Lorch as well, whose husband lost his job at City University because he had tried to desegregate Stuyvesant Town.
City University here in New York.
City University in New York. He was a math professor. Stuyvesant Town was owned by the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. It was completely white. There were no black tenants. He tried to agitate to get black tenants in there, and he lost his job at City University over it.
Which tells you some of the distance we've traveled. I mean, we're in the City University studios right now, but in those days, if you crossed the racial line, you could lose your gig at City University too.
Right.
For being too progressive, for
That's
being
right.
on the side of the people who are trying to desegregate.
Yeah, I got to do his obituary for the Times, and I mean, he lost his job at City University, then he lost his job at Penn State. Why was he in Little Rock teaching at an all-black school? Because it was the only school that would have him.
Right.
So that's why his wife was there that morning. trying to comfort Elizabeth Eckford.
So now, Elizabeth and the other black students eventually got into Central
Right, a couple
High
of weeks
School
later.
when Dwight Eisenhower had to send in the 101st Airborne.
Right, the paratroopers.
To get it done. But Hazel did not go to Central High. She was a student at Central High School when the photo was taken.
That's right.
But she didn't go to Central High School. So talk a little bit about the different trajectories that these two women followed for a few years and how they subsequently came together.
Well, Hazel had been at Central the year before and was there anticipating that she would stay for the school year the morning that she's in the picture.
Right.
But when the picture went all over the world and she became a kind of lightning rod, her parents felt that it might be wise to take her out of Central and send her to a very small rural high school that was actually closer to where they lived. So she never went to Central the year this picture was taken. She went to this little tiny school. She met her husband, her husband-to-be, shortly after she got there. She wasn't much of a student. She dropped out. She got married. She very, very quickly had a family and was quite prepared to disappear from the scene. But that was until, I mean, it's easy to look at her as sort of the embodiment of Southern racism.
Which a lot of people
a lot of people did and do. Mm-hmm. Part of the beauty of the story for me, I mean, I like to write about stories that are counterintuitive or surprising or don't fit pat little categories of people's expectations. And part of what intrigued me about this story was that when Hazel had a young family, she was still short of 20, I think. I mean, she had I think she had 2 kids before she was 20, and maybe all 3 of her kids before she was 20. When she had a couple of her kids, she began to realize that these kids were going to grow up to see this picture when they got to school, and this was going to be their mother.
Right.
And other kids in the school were going to talk about, hey, that's your mama in that picture, and that she better be able to explain herself. And she started thinking about all of this and started thinking about how she should mend her ways and how she could sort of recover from this and not be associated with this picture for the rest of her days. And when nobody was looking, I mean, this is what amazes me now, there are all these Oprah moments of contrition, of highly public contrition. When no one was looking, when she was 19 or 20 or 21 years old, she picked up the phone and called Elizabeth, or tried to reach Elizabeth, to apologize to her for what she had done. And she never reached Elizabeth, but she got as far as her grandfather and spoke to her grandfather about it. And this, to me, was a crucial moment in the story. As I say, it wasn't the kind of thing that she did for public consumption.
Right.
She did it because she felt that she needed to cleanse her soul. And that's what she tried to do that morning when no one was looking. And for the next couple of decades, really, she tried to make amends, and she got involved with the black community. She worked with black kids in high school. She taught them, she tutored them. Her husband used to make fun of her, for doing all these do-good kinds of things. I don't think that she got a lot of encouragement from her family, but she tried to set things right with herself and with her God and with the universe.
There wasn't much of an upside for her anywhere, either in her community, her family. There wasn't any kind of media attention that was positive.
She got no encouragement from anybody. And in fact, I mean, the more that you were associated with this kind of thing, the more flack you got. But what was impressive was that she was never deterred by it.
So how did she finally get in touch with Elizabeth?
Well, she finally just called her. I mean, she actually arranged it through.
This is much later.
This is much later. This was in the late 90s, at around the time of the 40th anniversary of the desegregation. I mean, the desegregation of Little Rock Central High School became really an epic moment in the civil rights movement, often commemorated. And every 5 or 10 years there would be a commemoration. And people would try to interview her, and she got to know the photographer, the man who took the picture, as I say, a fellow named Will Counts,
Right.
who had been a photographer for the Little Rock, for the Arkansas Democrat. And he was the one, it was kind of elaborate and kind of cloak and dagger, done by stealth in a way to keep the press away. He was the one that brought the two of them together.
Interesting.
He was the one that brought the two of them together, and Hazel actually went to Elizabeth's house with a couple of other people sort of facilitating it. No cameras around, and the two of them actually got to talk to one another.
And what were their reactions?
I think that they were surprised. They found that, I mean, Hazel was hesitant and Elizabeth was wary, understandably so.
Right.
Understandably so. But with their chaperones around, they meshed in a way. They discovered that they had certain things in common. They had children, albeit by very different routes. Elizabeth
Right.
never married. She had 2 children by 2 different men.
Right.
Elizabeth had led a very, very turbulent life.
She'd actually even been in the Army.
She'd been in the Army. She never really found herself. She had all kinds of mental issues. She had never gotten over the trauma of that day.
It seemed, reading your book, it seemed obvious that she suffered from depression, but it also seemed like depression ran in her family.
That's right. I mean, she had a predisposition to depression, and then it was exacerbated by, I guess you would call it, the PTSD of that.
This is not the sort of thing, the sort of life that would help you get over depression.
No, that's right. That's right. And it shows really how haphazard the desegregation of the high school was, because these kids were chosen very carelessly. If these kids needed to be Jackie Robinson. They needed to be selected with the care that Branch Rickey had picked Jackie Robinson as somebody who could withstand the abuse that he was certain to get. And instead, they ended up choosing a hypersensitive young woman prone to depression in any case, and somebody who was going to have great difficulty standing up to what she endured, not only that day, but in the school after that day, after the crowds and after the reporters and after everybody had disappeared. These 9 kids were in school that whole year. And they were subject to terrible abuses,
Right.
harassment, being thrown into lockers, being knocked down to the floor.
That was another story. You gave these details in your book, but those details were not commonly known over all these decades.
No, that's right.
The harassment that the
Yeah.
black kids had to endure once they got into Central High.
Well, it's an interesting, we come back again to our common calling, journalism.
Right.
The journalists disappeared after the kids got in.
Mm-hmm.
They had other stories to cover. The civil rights caravan moved on.
Right.
And the NAACP, I interviewed Mildred Roxborough, whom you'll know of from the NAACP, a veteran NAACP activist. And she said to me when I interviewed her for the book, very matter-of-factly, once we got those kids in, we moved on. We had other battles to fight. So those kids were abandoned after they got in, and no one was watching them. And so all year long, a band of racist white students ran amok and tortured them. Threw pencils at them, threw tomatoes at them, abused them verbally, shouted at them, knocked them down the stairs.
Right.
And Elizabeth was right at the center of all of that. So it's the kind of thing that she never really recovered from.
There were so many poignant stories in this book. I want to go back to what you were saying about the reporters who tried to assist her and how dangerous that was. On a subsequent occasion, when they were trying to get into the school, 3 black reporters were actually attacked by the mob. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, this was, I think, it might have been the same day or the next day.
Right.
And there were three reporters, I think there were 2 reporters and a photographer from the black press. The black press was still very important back
Right.
then. And they were an important source for me, and they really carried word of the story to the black community. One of them was a reporter named Alec Wilson who wrote for the Tri-State Defender from Memphis, which was a branch of the famous Chicago Defender, one of the leading black weeklies of that era. And he was set upon by a mob, hit over the head with a brick, knocked to the ground. He was, I mean, it's almost too painful to describe. He was immaculately dressed the way that black reporters had to be these days. They were representing their whole community. And they had to, he was a former Marine, he carried himself with great dignity, and he was just set upon by all of these cowardly people who would only do it as a mob, and attacked and knocked to the ground and beaten. Really, within an inch of his life, he never recovered from it. He developed Parkinsonism. He was a young man. He developed Parkinsonism as a result of the beating, and he died very young. And I like to mention him, and I mention him in the book. I wanted to mention him in that Time story the other day, and would have had there been room.
Right.
I mean, there are many, 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 many victims in the civil rights movement whose grievances were never redressed in the courts. No one was ever prosecuted for that killing. I mean, the people who attacked him died in their beds.
Right.
It's just infuriating.
Yeah, in reading it, you know, whether technically you could make a case for murder or whatever, reading it, I just got the feeling that this guy was just killed by that mob.
Yeah, that's right. I had the privilege of talking to his widow, and you know, she was very resigned to what had happened. I mean, it was moving to me.
So after Elizabeth and Hazel finally get together, they actually develop a relationship and even a friendship. But this is not a sort of a saccharine sweet tale of forgiveness and redemption. So give us a little bit of a flavor of their relationship.
Well, that's what I loved about this story. I mean, who could have predicted that after the two of them got together, they did become friends. They had a lot in common. They loved flowers. They went to flower shows together. They liked going to thrift stores together. I talk about how the two, and Elizabeth never learned to drive, so Hazel would drive her everywhere. And I think they filled a void in one another's lives, and and it's an inspiring thing to contemplate. I talk about how if other motorists on the road in Little Rock knew who that black woman and the white woman next to her in the car were, they would have driven off the road. But that's not where the story ends. The story ends that the sort of racial chasm between the two of them reemerged as Elizabeth placed certain demands on Hazel to disown her family, to disown her past, didn't believe Hazel fully, distrusted Hazel, and the two of them split apart. And I detail all of that in the book, and to me it's just, it's a metaphor for how racial problems persist, and there are no happy endings here. It's the fundamental chasm in American society. So they represent all these different forces in our culture.
So I guess we're going to have to leave it right there. I wish we had more time. David Margolick, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, Bob.
We'll be back in a moment with a final word. It has been 50 years since the New York Jets championship season of 1968. I was a young man then, fresh out of the Army, and when my underdog Jets triumphed in the Super Bowl on January 12, 1969, I put the top down on my convertible and, despite the cold weather, drove around Montclair, New Jersey, collecting the winnings from the many bets I had made. It was the era of Joe Willie Namath and Don Maynard and George Sauer Jr., and two fantastic running backs named Matt Snell and Emerson Boozer. Who knew that that would be the last burst of championship brilliance from the Jets for the next half century and more? Who could possibly have foreseen the pain, the utter futility for Jets fanatics like myself, whose hopes over so many years were perpetually raised and dashed by a team I've come to honestly believe is cursed? My wife and I went to Jacksonville, Florida some weeks ago to visit friends who had tickets to see the Jets play the Jaguars. We got rained on at the stadium and the Jets got destroyed 31-12. So why bother? Why keep rooting for a team that is good at very little other than breaking its fans' hearts? Well, that Super Bowl win is one reason. The memories of that glorious season are associated with the buddies that I made those bets with, great friends, some of whom are no longer with us, and the memories of my parents and grandparents who didn't think it was odd at all that I was such a fanatic. Sometimes they joined in with my delirium. And with my sister, who has the photos of all the people we were close to growing up. For sports fans, the teams they root for, win or lose, are part of the good times in their lives and a touchstone for the memories of those good times as the years go by. For fanatics, those memories last forever. Go Jets.